Great. So thank you, everyone, for joining the No Business Apps webinar today. This is Tony Berry. I'm with Infinity Info Systems. I'm actually joined by Bill Nagel, who's the Industry Alliance Director at K2, and also Matt Green, who is one of our marketing specialists at Infinity. So, Bill, if you don't mind just saying hi, we'll check the audio real quick.
Good morning, everyone.
Great. So it sounds like we're working. And Matt, are you seeing everything on your end just to make sure we're presenting okay? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, I'm a Managing Director at Infinity Info Systems, Bill's with K2, and what we're going to be discussing today is really no-code business applications using K2 and Saleslogix. Also works for those CRM systems, and then we're going to do a demonstration and then a question and answer. So Bill, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Tony. So, well, welcome, everyone. Before getting into the demonstration, I want to explain a little bit about the K2 platform and how that's positioned in the market and how you can render value from it. K2's business process management platform used to build business applications. Think about human-to-human and human-to-system processes. And with the value of automation, you have processes happening more efficiently, more consistently, and with a higher degree of insight. And those benefits just by themselves are the key business benefits to how our clients are seeing value within K2 and how they choose to apply it within their business. The other fundamental difference between K2 and other BPM platforms is its ease of use, ease of design use, and how easily it can be used to render UIs, integrate with existing UIs, and integrate with existing systems that are relevant to the business processes at hand. And give you some examples of these processes. Tony, I've lost control.
Yeah, it looks like it took control away from you, Bill, so let me see if I can push it back to you again. It's telling me you now have it. Try one more time. There we go.
Is that me now? Okay, very good. All right, so once with automation, you can speed up your processes now, and that happens on a couple fronts. One is on the build side. As I've mentioned, one of the fundamental differentiators of K2 is its ease of design, and you'll see that with form design, with process design, with report design, and with data integration. Now, inherently, all BPM platforms, once they're integrated, you have a more efficient system. Think about going from a manual-based process to one that's more automated. If you let the computers, let the systems do the remedial work of updating systems and handing tasks from one user to the next, instead of it being paper-based and faxed and emailed, where there's inherent delays and the risk of getting lost, you can drastically speed up a process. And so some examples of how we've seen that rendered in the market are as follows. And these are all case studies that you can choose to look at further for further detail. Roche, global company, global pharmaceutical company, they started small with K2, but have since integrated it with their existing order system to reduce cycle times from the order of days to hours. Now, with this added efficiency, they've also been able to have better insight into that process, and with the Roche, the pharmaceutical, and the regulatory concerns that they have, they were able to track or have a better insight into the distribution of free products, which they're required to provide to the government. Additionally, Sandvik, another global company, dealing with flash memory cards for computing devices, their prices have to be adjusted multiple times a month globally per regions based on what their vendors are doing and what currency fluctuations are dictating. Now, before K2 went in there, this was a manual process and was prone to delay and error. Now, with K2 and the automation that we've provided, they've gone from a 2-week average turnaround time to less than 30 minutes, and this is their whole pricing catalog globally. Now, these are two examples of Fortune 500 companies, but you can also be a smaller concern. Island Savings, a regional bank in Canada, they're using K2 for loan origination. Now, in the loan origination process with Island Savings, this was working well. They had their forms that were being processed, and they were able to get people on board in 3 days. And with K2, they were able to reduce the cycle time to 45 minutes. Now, with that reduced cycle time, they've estimated they're saving on the order of $1.5 million a year. Now, these cycle times were reduced just by having the process validate that there were no fields missing in a form before it was sent to the next step. So you can imagine if it was a paper-based form, it goes to the next person for processing, and they say, wait, I need this information corrected, or I need it filled out completely. And that's where Island Savings was able to drastically reduce this cycle time. Now, additionally, there's value in K2 with how it enables IT departments to integrate their systems together. In all of the previous examples, that was relevant. In the Roche example, in the Sandvik example, they were actually mating a business process to their back-end ERP system. In both of those cases, it was SAP. And for the bank as well, they're integrating with different people on different types of devices. Sandisk also enabled mobile integration, so on the back end, the system is updating SAP, but the users sometimes are away from their desks, so they have to enable them in the field on the mobile devices. They can interact with the process even when they're away from the desk, on a tablet, on a phone. And so all of these capabilities drastically extend the breadth of how you can interact with people when and where they are. Let's talk a little bit more about the K2 platform and how it's positioned. So 4 base components of the K2 platform. The foundational component is how we integrate with data, because all processes have to do with presenting data to end users, making decisions, and then affecting data somewhere else or that data itself. The workflows have to do with design efficiency. The forms, the presentation layer, and the reports are the level of insight that's provided to business managers and what's happening within the business. And so there you'll see different capabilities within K2 that allow great visibility within these fronts. Now, on the data front, you'll see reference to smart objects when you look more into the K2 technology. So what basically smart objects are an ability to wrap data where it resides natively. So think about all the existing systems you have, and this was the case with Roche. They have their existing SAP system. They have other ad hoc systems that they had integrated together to provide an overall solution for fulfilling orders. And so what K2 does with smart objects is, hey, we'll leave the data where it resides natively, we'll wrap it with a smart object, and by doing so, we're able to bring that data immediately into the workflow process, into the forms, and into the reports that are necessary. Now, this helps remove the problem of having stale data, because any handle to a smart object is actually showing you the data as it's rendered in that native system. So there's no duplicating data. Additionally, the smart object is a two-way street. So should you need to update that data in the back-end system, you can do so. Now, hold that thought for a second. We'll go into forms, but we'll come back to the data component. Forms, on the other hand, are the interface to the end user, and forms are very important to render properly because they affect the usability and the intuitiveness of the system. But the data that's presented there is what people need to make decisions, and so having data consolidated in a single point of view helps people make decisions more efficiently. Now, what you're seeing on this form is actually showing data from multiple different systems. Now, if you were just looking at this form straight on within the system, you wouldn't necessarily know that or care about that. You just know that you need all this data to make a decision. What IT has done on the back end, though, has taken, I've lost control again, Tony seems. There we go, thank you. What we've done on the back end, though, is take data where it's residing and bring it into the form. So the top portion of the form is actually data coming from the CRM system, Saleslogix. And then on the bottom side, you have information coming from your ERP system, SAP, and still a third portion is coming from SharePoint. Now, what happens within this particular form is that within the CRM portion of the form, you see these two items that can be, or a selection box of accounts that can be selected. Once those accounts are selected, of course, the Saleslogix component will be updated, but immediately the data that's relevant to that account within SAP is brought into the form, as well as the information with SharePoint is brought into the form. So to the end user, seamless experience. But what we've done is created basically a digital dashboard within the context of a single form. All right. Now, besides rendering the forms, management of the forms is also quite important. When you think about the forms that you're designed to help people integrate or help people interact with your systems, you're rendering an initial design, having or presenting the form fields that they need to make decisions, and having that pushed out to production. As time goes on, you say you want to evolve your processes, you want to add additional pieces of information to the forms. K2 makes that a seamless process, and adding that not only to the process, but also to the forms that are rendered to collect that information. And this usability is quite important, because not only are you dealing with forms that are rendered on traditional devices, but you're dealing with forms that are rendered on mobile devices as well. Seems I've lost control one more time. There we go. Whoops. So this was the rendition of the same form via 3 different types of devices. And again, by doing so, you're enabling people to interact with your applications while they're away from the office. Now, this can be people out on lunch that are traditionally in the office, but this can also be field technicians, operational people in the field, taking care of broken pieces of equipment or addressing patients in the field. If you could advance, Tony, that'd be great. Thank you. So the workflow design, K2, another differentiator of K2, within its ease of use, we've enabled several different designers within K2. So you have the business analyst can even go in and say, hey, I understand my business process. I want to render it within K2 and leverage the value of the underlying processing power. But then you also have the high-end developers. They say, well, I want to be a bit more complex with my design, and I want to be able to get down to the code level when and if needed. There are designers on both ends of the spectrum. But there are several designers within K2 that enable this design resolution. And lastly, reports. Sorry. If you could go back, yeah. So within design, not only the workflow design is important, but also the rules that are being appended to that process to expedite. So we can say, don't let this form go forward unless these 3 fields are filled out, or make sure that these components are in agreement before moving forward. Additionally, to guard against delays within the system, you can put prescribed escalations on any particular step or process, so that once a particular user is notified, should there be a delay of a certain amount of time, you can update that person's manager so that they can actually reroute the task accordingly. And again, lastly, reports. Reports are so important to business owners because they are basically the daily news for the business. When within K2, not only can you see immediate process status rendering, and on the top left is actually a view flow diagram showing you where you are within the K2 process, what steps have been completed, what paths have been followed, and where you're currently sitting. Additionally, as processes are run for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, you can analyze where your bottlenecks are, what steps are taking the longest, what users within those steps are taking the longest, and then you can adjust to accommodate your business needs. But having that insight is paramount. When you think about the compliance needs that are also satisfied by having that great reporting available. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Tony.
Great. So thanks, Bill. Really appreciate the overview. Let me do just one little quick change here. There we go. So hopefully I now have control of the PowerPoint. Yeah, I do. So what we wanted to do now is, so Bill's talked a great deal about K2 as a foundation and really using data, workflow, reports, et cetera, to actually build these business applications. So we're going to go through 3 user scenarios and integrate this to Saleslogix in each case. So we're going to talk about expense claims, a fairly simple K2 application to handle standard expense claims associated in this case with clients. We're then going to show a proposal generation or automation system, and then a quick, this idea of a quick quote or quote creation. And I'm going to focus on a couple areas. I'm going to focus on, you probably heard Bill talk about the runtime or user experience, so we're going to show K2 from the way a user would actually interface with it. But then we're also going to talk about the design time experience, and this is really the configuration or the no-code side of the application. And you'll see this is really part of the big power of K2 is its ability to build solutions without having to actually write, custom code or script. So that's part of the real power. Then the third piece, and Bill mentioned the smart object capability, this ability to integrate with various systems. We'll show a couple examples of that today. We'll actually show Saleslogix integrating with SharePoint, also with Microsoft Office, Active Directory, et cetera. And this is just 4 of literally hundreds of different connection capabilities that K2 has got through the smart object functionality. And what's great about the smart object functionality is it makes all these systems look common. And from more of a database and a field and column standpoint. So once you understand how a smart object works, you actually don't need to know the source system that well to actually integrate with it. So I'm going to start up, and Bill, just to double check, are you seeing the screen now that shows a K2 workflow?
I am. I see the.
Okay, great. So technology's at least behaving for the moment, so we'll roll forward. But this is going to be that expense management. And I thought what I'd show first is I'm going to show actually the design time experience real quickly, and then I'll flip to the way you would actually use it as a user, and then we'll show how it actually integrates into Saleslogix. Because this is one actually where the front end doesn't look like Saleslogix at all. But here's the workflow, and at its core, K2's history and strength is really around this visual workflow tool. So in this case, the scenario we're going to build around is just a common expense management functionality. So this is the idea of I, as an employee, I need to submit my expenses as I come back from a trip. In this case, it's going to be a trip associated with a client. So I also want to flag the client coming from Saleslogix and then actually the fact that it's billable. But as you can see, this process is going to go through basically 2 approval steps. So the manager is going to approve it, and then the finance department is actually going to process it and pay the individual. What's really interesting is this workflow runs independently of the various systems, Saleslogix being one of those. Then Bill mentioned forms, and we're going to see this in a section, but this is the form that we're actually going to be interfacing with. And this form actually does integrate to Saleslogix, but you'll notice you don't, as a user, even need to understand that that's what's going on. And then finally, this is the actual smart object. You can see it looks just like a database. So this smart object has the employee information as a description. It has customer from CRM. So just as Bill showed in that one system, this is actually pulling data from 3 different places. So it's pulling it from Active Directory, which is where all the employee information comes from. It's then pulling from a SQL Server database, which is where all the expense information is coming from. And then finally, it's picking up the customer information from Saleslogix. So now let's flip over to the way a user would interface with this. So in this case, you can notice I've opened that form. This form, as I mentioned, is pulling information from a couple different places. It understands I'm signed in now, and I've come in as basically administrator of this environment. And because I'm administrator, Active Directory is picked up that I'm Barry Hoffman. It's picked up that Ashley Evans is my manager, and then I'm in the sales department. It's also loaded the date and the expense month. This customer information is actually a look over into Saleslogix. In this case, we've actually got it integrated with the standard Saleslogix evaluation database that everybody's probably familiar with, and probably familiar with the Abbott Worldwide and Abbott Limited example records. But in this case, what I've done is I'm coming back from a trip, and I want to capture the client visit. So I actually met with Abbott Limited, and what that's done, very transparent to the user, but it's gone over, talked to Saleslogix, pulled that list back of accounts, and now that I've tagged an account, it's actually added that account ID to this expense record. So in this case, if I wanted to see expenses at a client basis, I could go over into CRM and see it there, but at this point, I'm actually looking in to CRM from K2. And now I'm just going to enter what my expense report was. So let's just say this was airfare. Oops, sorry, it's client visit, excuse me. So this was a client visit, and I'm not typing very well today. And I want to put a note in here that this actually is billable. So I do want to make sure that my finance department knows that this was a client professional services visit, so it was associated with a billable expense, so they can actually invoice the client for it. And now I'm going to add my expense claims. And you can see I've got again, it's another form, and this is a wizard-driven form that allows me to flag who I paid. So in this case, it was U.S. Airways. I can enter the amount. So let's say it was, actually it was a fairly expensive flight. So let's say it was $675, and it was associated with airfare. And I actually want to attach the receipt. So one of the nice things with K2 is not only can it integrate with line of business systems, but it can actually integrate with Office and also with storage systems or document management systems such as SharePoint, and in this case even pull in PDF files and attach them to records. In this case, I'm just going to bring up this receipt. It's actually now pulled that PDF in. It's storing it against this record. And I'm just going to put here is that this was billable. And then I'm actually going to add that item to my expense report. So you can see it's building this, and I could do 3 or 4 or 5 different expenses associated with this. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the Submit Expense Claim button. And what that button's going to do is it's going to start to fire off that workflow that I showed you in the back. And what that workflow is actually going to do is it's going to go through 2 levels of approval. So the first thing is it's going to send it to Barry's manager, Ashley, and Ashley can then respond and actually approve or decline that expense report. At that point, it's then going to go over to finance for processing. Now, what's interesting about K2 is it can action these things in different ways. So I can respond via a form and approve this, or I can actually do it via email. So K2 has this ability, because it integrates with Exchange and Outlook, to actually send an email with all this detail, and that way I can just respond to it. So if Ashley happens to be on the road, she could actually respond to that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to submit it, and you're going to see here it says, hey, Barry, thank you for submitting it, and it's then going to roll it forward. Now, in this case, so I'm not logging in and out of the systems. I've essentially now gone to a dashboard, as Bill was describing, where you can start to see the results. And this happens to be my self-service portal, so it actually shows me the status of all of my requests, so all of the things that I've got that have been submitted that K2 is processing. You can see actually there's 2 different types of workflows that I've got running. One is a trade ticket, which is another whole different system for actually managing funds unassociated with the demo today. Then I've also got the expense claim that just came through. And so this is now setting for first approval. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop over to Outlook. And what you'll see over here is I'm now in Outlook as Ashley. And so essentially I'm seeing now that K2 has sent me an email. So I could be on the road, on my mobile device or my phone or in Outlook. And from here I can actually review it. And by the way, we could have actually attached the PDF and other things to it. But what Ashley's going to do is she's going to review it, and she says, you know what, I'm actually fine with this. I'm going to go ahead and just type approved. I'm going to send it back. And what's happened now is K2 behind the scenes is monitoring Ashley and the fact that she had approved that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh the screen, and we're going to see this is going to go from first approval over to finance here in just a second. And I should get an email response back saying that it has picked that up. So it'll take just a second for that to come through. But what's happening again behind the scenes is K2 is actually monitoring Ashley's email. And in just a second, hopefully if all goes well, we'll bring that back. But what's also nice is you can get a visual representation of where things are at on work. I should open that up, actually fired through. So this is now a visual example of that workflow. I'm at the first approval, and you can see where it's green is where it's been processed. So it just accepted my approval. So the green means now that it's over at finance, and it's not going to go down the decline tab. So let's go back and take a look at that. So let's go back to our screen here and refresh it. And you're going to see now it says it's actually a finance approval. So let's pretend now we're over in the finance department, and I want to actually service it or action it from here rather than via email. So what I can do is I can actually open that task. Whoops, you have to refresh it. Let me go back to my items. I'm going to pick up this one and open the task. There we go. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually opening a representation of that form. That form, if you'll notice, has a lot of the fields are actually locked down, and then it's added a bottom panel where I could put in comments, etc. on it, and then I, as the finance department, can actually then process. And you'll see my choices are different. Instead of approve or decline, basically I just signal to Barry when I've actually approved that expense report. So now I've let him know that it's going to be processed, and what you can see is it's fallen off the top, and now it's moved down to the bottom in terms of an approved expense report, and it's this very last one right here. And so if Barry were monitoring this, he could go up and actually in his portal see all of the expense reports that have been approved, where it's at, who's responsible for it, et cetera. So that's a quick example of a workflow or business process solution based upon K2 that has really light integration with Saleslogix. Remember, it's updating the client that this expense was against. But it is this idea of building a very quick, purpose-driven app for a specific solution. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into one that's a little bit more complicated, and we're going to focus in on actually proposal automation. And what I want to talk about here is really two design criteria on this one. So the proposal automation is a lot more complicated. So in this case, it's actually going to build a complex proposal document. It's going to allow you to build that proposal from wherever you need to. So if you're on the road, you can do it from your iPad or mobile device. If you're in Saleslogix Web or LAN, you can do it from there. Or if you want to go to a portal, maybe you're in front of a client and you want to generate it with them, you can actually come at it from 3 different ways. So we want to build one application. And as Bill mentioned, these forms can be repurposed in multiple places. So we want to be able to use that in all 3 of these. This one's going to have deeper integration with CRM. So you'll see you can actually start it from within CRM. Also on the back side, we wanted to create this in a way that I can administer it through the normal tools that I use. So in this case, it's SharePoint. It's actually having a similar dashboard that we saw on the expense reports, and then it's using this concept of Word templates to actually build these proposal documents. And it's doing all that through common SharePoint components. And think of K2 as really gluing all this together. So it's gluing SharePoint with Saleslogix, also allowing you this access from anywhere in terms of the way you're going to get to your information. So what I'm going to do now is pull another screen over. And Bill, if you could just let me know again if you're seeing a new screen, which is a portal screen. Hopefully that is.
I do. See, yeah, I do. Yeah, sorry, I was looking for mute, but yeah, looks good.
No problem. So I'm going to start with the portal. So what I'm going to sign in first is I'm signing in as a portal. What's very interesting with K2 is these forms can be internet-facing. And so this is a portal form that is actually integrated with SharePoint and Saleslogix, but it's in a way that you can get to it through a secure connection, but through a standard browser. And that browser can be Internet Explorer, Safari, Chrome, et cetera. It really doesn't matter because of the way these forms get served up. What you'll also notice, these forms are smart. So we're going to reuse this form in a couple different ways. In this case, because I'm coming in through a portal, a couple things get turned on. One, this logo at the top shows up. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to be looking up the client that I want to build the proposal for. So very much like we showed with the claim expenses, expense claims, this is going to look at an integration into CRM. So in this case, I'm going to look up the client name, and I'm going to look up the contact. And then I'm going to build this through SharePoint. So just so everybody understands kind of the way SharePoint is set up is, let me go to the proposal side. So the way SharePoint is set up is SharePoint has a whole series of basically document templates or content types that it's going to use to build a proposal. So I've got things like business units, solution offerings, et cetera, that I can pull together to actually build the proposal. And then what I do is I actually build those proposals for each client. So it's able to read Saleslogix, K2 is, then generate a folder in SharePoint. That folder is based upon, as we'll see in a second, is based upon the proposal title and the client. And then as I dig into that, I can actually get to the actual proposal that was built. And so we'll be doing this, so we'll actually see K2 that do this behind the scenes. I just wanted to kind of set that up for everybody. The second piece is it's got this idea of a master template. And so in this case, it's a very simple master template for the proposal. It's got a logo. It's got a series of sections where it can introduce other text. And this is one of the capabilities of content types and content sets in SharePoint. And then it actually has the ability to embed pictures also. And then if you wanted to, I'm not going to be showing it in the demo today, you could even, when this proposal is done, walk through an approval process and then actually send that to a client for e-signature. And K2 would essentially be managing all that across the various systems. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back over here to my proposal generator. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a proposal type. This now is picking one of those document types. I'm going to pick this one. I'm then going to give it a title. So let's just give it a title of Coke. Let's use Coke as our example. and I'm going to then give it a subtitle, and let's just say it's a new project, and I want to actually give it a due date, so I'm going to give it a due date of the 31st. And if you'll notice, there's a rule behind this form that says, hey, if this is the 31st, I want you to follow up by 11:30. By the way, this could actually kick off an activity over in CRM or Saleslogix if you'd like it to, and then it actually has a valid until date of October 31st. I can enter various notes. If I want to get free-form notes on the proposal, I can do that. Just like before, it's picked up who I am and the email associated with me, so it's going to fill in some content on the proposal. And now I'm going to do very much like I did before. I'm going to go search in Saleslogix. So this is reaching through the portal back into Saleslogix. Let's do Abbott Worldwide this time. Actually, no, let's look up Coke. Sorry, I'll just pick Abbott. We'll click OK, and then I can also go and pick up the content, the contact for this. So let's pick up Abbott here, and let's pick Keith as the person that I actually want this to go to. So now it's integrated or basically attached this proposal, and we'll see this in just a minute, to the account record and the contact record over in Saleslogix. I'm going to hit Next, and now what's happening is K2 is now kind of managing the building of this proposal through SharePoint. So I'm going to grab now the various components that I want to make a part of my proposal. So I want these two documents to be built on top of. I'm going to hit Next. It's then going to allow me to pick some specific area information, and then I'm going to roll forward again. And now I'm in kind of the final setup. And by the way, this can have multiple steps, especially if you have a very complex proposal. At this point, I can see I've got these documents. I could reorder from this point, but I also want to put a couple images in this proposal. So I'm going to do Create. And what I can do here is I can go grab an actual image if I'd like, and I'm just going to go grab, let's just grab the K2 logo here. And then I'm going to actually upload that. And here you can see I've got all the images that are available to me, and I can preview those if I'd like. And I can even go further. Let's say that I want to put this in one of the templates that I downloaded. So I want to put it in this one, and this one I want to put here, etc. I can actually pick where those images are going to go. Then when I'm all done, I can hit this Generate Proposal piece. And I believe I'm going to get one error here as it tries to reach back into Saleslogix because I'm not on VPN. We'll see if this works. But essentially what it's doing behind the scenes is that, yeah, I got this error. So basically what it's trying to do is trying to put the record back into Saleslogix, and so I'm going to get a little error here just because I'm not connected correctly, but it's just because of the demo. But essentially what's happening is there's a big workflow firing behind here that's starting to generate that document. It's going to finish that document, allow me to actually open it up within SharePoint, and then actually attach it to the account record in Saleslogix. I'll actually show that I had one that was when I was connected that actually worked correctly, but we'll look at that. But essentially what's happening here, you normally wouldn't necessarily have this screen, but what this is doing behind the scenes is a very complex workflow for building that overall process or proposal is actually running in behind the scenes. And so you can see these process steps, just like we saw with expense claims, will go through that overall process for you. And then what happens at the end when it's all done is, let's go and look here. Behind the scenes in SharePoint, what you're going to see is it's actually generating. It created a folder. Inside that folder, it pulled over all of the templates. And the reason it does this is you may change your templates in the future, but you want ones that were actually used for that proposal. And then it actually generates that proposal and then attaches it over against the record in Saleslogix. So that's the overall flow. Now what's really interesting about this is I can use this in more than just one place. So I showed the portal access. What I thought I would do now is we'll open it up actually inside Saleslogix. I've got that over here in this environment. So let me kick out of here for a second. And of course it's going to make me log back in. So let's look at it from the other way. It's great that we can have portals, we can have things that look into Saleslogix, but what would be great would be to go the other way. And so what I wanted to show here is, and the great thing too is the actual application or the solution that you build in K2 can be used both in Saleslogix LAN, Saleslogix Web, and even Saleslogix Mobile. And because it is a smart form that is the front end of this, it can reconfigure itself based upon where you launch it from. So in this case, I'm actually inside Saleslogix LAN. And what I've done here is I've attached that smart form to a tab called the Proposal tab. And what you can see is it's the same tab, same basically visual that I had before, but it's turned off the header. And it's turned off the header because it basically doesn't need to waste the real estate, and it's also, it understands what account that I'm actually on. I can also, because this is in SharePoint and I know where these documents are being stored, I can also have the SharePoint list that K2 provides, where it can basically look into SharePoint and see the various documents that are there. And hopefully this is going to refresh. Come back to it again. And essentially what this is going to do, there goes, it's looking over into SharePoint. It's saying, hey, what documents got generated for Coca-Cola? And then you can actually see the document here. So this is looking back into that SharePoint site. And if I want to, I can actually open the document directly into Word. So I could open it up if I wanted to edit it or repurpose it. And again, from a user standpoint, I don't have to worry about where this is in SharePoint or located it. I pick it actually up right inside Saleslogix. So this user doesn't know, but that's actually, let's not say that. And so it's basically integrating itself directly with SharePoint. And so from a user standpoint, that's not something you have to worry about. That same capability exists in Saleslogix or Web. So let's go look at it here. So I'm going to go look up that same Coca-Cola record. And it's this guy right here. So I'm going to look up the account record. And then I want to go to the opportunities, and it's actually this opportunity. And what you're going to see is that exact same form is now displayed in Saleslogix Web. And that exact same integration into SharePoint is also in Saleslogix Web. So what's really interesting around this is we built this once, and we've now used it in 3 places. We've used it in a portal, we've used it in LAN, and we've actually used it in Web, and it could even be used in Saleslogix Mobile if you would like to use it that way. And the interface is the same, but you can change the styling and things like that on the document if you'd like. So that's I'm going to now hop over to the third example. Let me get back to the PowerPoint real quick. Hopefully I got to the right one. There we go. So the third example I wanted to go through is one now that shows even more depth in terms of complexity, and this is really now focusing on this idea of quote creation. So this is really now an integration going both ways, where I've got K2 talking to Saleslogix, building a document, but even more importantly, it's picking up some of the rules, some of the pricing rules that are over in Saleslogix, and it's really driving this idea of building a quick quote. And again, that's going to be available from anywhere, whether it's mobile, Saleslogix Web or LAN, or via portal. This idea of actually building a very rapid quote, and you'll get an idea of some of the user experience from an editing standpoint, some of the things that you can do that are quite unique within K2. So I'm going to start in Saleslogix Web at this point. And what you're going to see here, and I'll come back and show in a minute how this is built, is I've got a form that's going to jump up. And what this form is, and you can't really tell it because of the way it's styled, but that form at the bottom is actually a K2 form. So what happened is Saleslogix, because of its great mashup capability, has gone over, talked to K2, and said, bring back the quote for Coca-Cola headquarters and roofing. And what's really interesting about this is in context. So as I move from record to record, what you're going to see is the actual detail in K2 is changing. And what's happening is K2 and Saleslogix are in sync. They're essentially mashed up is the technical word. And so the two applications are talking to each other. So as I move from opportunity to opportunity, I bring back the quote associated with that opportunity. Also, the smart form, and we'll see this in a minute, has some headers and some additional information on it that when it sees itself inside Saleslogix, it turns all of that off. What's great, though, is I actually have editing capability here, but all the rules are coming out of Saleslogix, so discounts, pricing, etc. But let's say that I want to go into this and I want to change this quantity from 500 to 50. But you'll notice it's got great inline editing capability, actually stronger than what you get with Saleslogix Web. I don't know if everybody noticed it, but it actually updated the total amount. And so it is dynamically, and it is actually literally live updating Saleslogix as I make these changes. So if I went into the product table on this quote in Saleslogix, I would see these changes occurring as I hit the Save button here or as I navigate off. So the two applications are talking real time to each other. And that's, again, that ability of a smart object to talk back and forth. It's actually a two-way tool. As you can expect, I can do the same thing over in Saleslogix LAN. So if I go to my Quote tab here, we're going to see, again, the same capability. So as I move from opportunity to opportunity, I've got that exact same form. So if I decide to change the rules or change the form, as I release this, any of the applications that mash up with this, whether it be Saleslogix LAN, web, etc., will pick that up. Probably even more important is what I can do both via a portal and via a mobile device. So I'm using here, I'm familiar with iPad Peak, but this is basically a simulator. And what I'm doing here is I'm hitting via portal now going into that same quoting application. What you'll notice here, though, is it turns on a header, because obviously when you come to it off a mobile device, it doesn't necessarily know what account you're looking at. So what I can now do, though, is I can actually go do a search. So there's Coca-Cola. And as I do Coca-Cola and do a search on that, what I can also do is bring back those opportunities. Again, this is dynamic, so I'm going to bring back Coca-Cola headquarters. And you can see there's that quote with that change that I just made in it on the Fujitsu Lifebook, so the quantity that I changed. And so it's giving me all that information, and I can flip to other opportunities. And we'll see again, very much like I've got when I'm running inside Saleslogix. And then when I hit submit at this point, it could actually be submitted for approval. It could then send that to the client if I'd like, and then it could even request an e-signature, and all that could be managed by the K2 workflow running behind the scenes. So just in summary, I know I went through those fairly quickly. We've covered really 3 user scenarios. So we've talked about expense claims, we've talked about proposal generation, and we've talked about quote creation. So really 3 different uses of K2, all with varying degrees of integration with Saleslogix. The great thing is we didn't write any code. This is really all based upon, as Bill showed us, it's based upon data, workflow, reports, and this idea of integrating your system. So it gives you that tremendous capability of tying everything together. So with that, we were going to kind of wrap up and then open it up for questions. And I don't know if everybody knows there's a chat panel associated with this, so you can enter any questions that you might have in the chat panel at the bottom, and then Bill or I'd be happy to answer that for you. And Matt, I don't know if you're able to see, I'm not seeing the chat panel, so I'm hoping we can get to those. And I tell you, Bill, while we're waiting for a question to come in, one of the things that I know comes up a lot is, would you mind talking a little bit about kind of how K2 got started and how long you guys have been in the, really the workflow business, the BPM business?
No, sure. Happy to, Tony. Actually, we were in the similar business to what you guys are doing today. We were in the services business years back, before 2000, rendering service engagements, and there was the observation that many of the engagements had to do with processing, and the genius idea was, well, instead of building these solutions one-off, why don't we build the foundational components that will enable companies to build these processes more efficiently? And that genesis thought is what's threaded into the company today, and is rendered with the two main component, well, three main components of the build process, with forms, which has come in recently in past years, enabling users to design forms through configuration, to design workflows through configuration, and to integrate with data, all through configuration. And again, that central theme has been a core differentiator of K2 to other BPM players in the market.
Great, thanks, Bill. It looks like we did have 2 questions come in, so let me, and one of them is a little bit technical, but I'll go ahead and answer it. So one of the questions we got in was the integration to Saleslogix, how that was accomplished, whether it was using S data, and I think they mean by the question the the provider, which is basically the way you actually access the database in Saleslogix. So I'll take a cut at that. But actually can integrate either way. So I was showing two ways today. With the first part, and that's actually why I got the error, was using S-data, and I was having trouble actually connecting to S-data. It works, I just couldn't get the connection. That was that error we saw in the beginning, but that was coming through an S-data connection. And then the last one I was showing, the quote piece, is actually using the OLA provider. So you can come in either way into Saleslogix. That's, again, one of the great things about K2 is this ability of smart apps can use different connector types. They can speak directly to SQL. They can speak through a REST interface like S-data, and they can talk through other protocols associated, OAuth, a couple others that are out there that are becoming very common, and WCF, if everybody's familiar with that format. So it's got a lot of different ways of connecting. But yeah, I was showing both examples today, one coming through the Saleslogix provider and one coming through S-data. And hopefully that answered that question. If it didn't, just let us know. Oh, Bill, one other one, I think you can answer this, I'm seeing, is the forms and the fact that those can be used on multiple devices. Looks like this question is about what technology allows the K2 forms to do that.
Well, that's the smart forms themselves can be rendered in optimized ways. We're just using HTML5, and that enables us to render in multiple formats. There's more coming on the mobile front as time goes on, and happy to, once that's announced, we'll happy to share more.
Great. Yeah, that's one of the things I know our team has been quite excited about, is the fact that these forms render in a industry standard of HTML5, and then they'll understand too it's what CSS3 for the styling is. You can make it look, because it's really a web application that's coming back, you can embed it, style it, really reuse and repurpose it in multiple ways.
Yeah, we were surprised is maybe the wrong term, but we were pleased to see the traction that smart forms has seen in the market, because years back the only choice was ASPX. We've been associated with the Microsoft platform for the longest time and built on top of it, running on top of Windows and SQL Server and IIS. So traditional forms was ASPX, and then InfoPath as well. And just to share a quick story, as far as how much we knew forms was needed to be in a BPM platform, we had visited a client that we knew was not live, and we were concerned, and we said, hey, we're expecting to hear the worst from them. Say, hey, what's wrong with how are things going? And they started to praise the K2 technology of how easy the design process was for the automation. And we're like, okay, why aren't you guys live yet? And they said, well, 80% of our time has been spent doing UI design, and that's when we knew that forms configuration was going to be a central theme to making sure that we can incorporate users into a user-based process. That was paramount. Again, meeting the need, their UI needs, their for usability, and also form factor. When you talk about proposals, you think about, well, there's people in the field. How are you going to enable them? And so there was really great great traction in the market once we had that technology out there. Just expanded the use of what this automation technology can tackle.
Yeah, to kind of echo that, I know again our team, as they started to use the form designer more, really liked its drag and drop and highly configurable. Again, you're not writing code to do that. So they've got forms and rules, and we'll probably be doing another webinar where we'll dive into that kind of the design experience of K2 some more. But that's another one of the big strengths, is this ability to really no code develop these solutions by using that combination of forms, workflow, data, and reports. And we'll leave the phone up. I'm not seeing any other questions at this point. I'm finally seeing the chat panel. So Matt or Bill, if you guys don't see anything more, we'll leave it open for a few more minutes. But I just wanted to thank everybody for attending today. Bill, thank you for sitting in on this and giving us the update on K2. We will be posting this webinar via our blog, the K2 community site, so that'll be up shortly if anybody wants to go back through it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or your account manager at Infinity. But again, we appreciate everybody's time today and look forward to working together some more on this idea of building and running business applications powered by K2 and integrated with Saleslogix. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.